by some political pundits and opposition politicians that the ANC intends to either ignore the Public Protector's report or undermine the validity of her findings. We are asking everyone to subject the report to objective assessment and make informed judgment about it. So we're confirming that we are neither intending to ignore or undermine the validity of the report. There's no such intention in the ANC. It is our view that the report of the Public Protector in the main confirms the findings of the Interministerial Task Team report released in December 2013. We'll return to the differences in the remedies to the problems and deviations found by both investigations. Both reports came to the same conclusion in the following areas. One, that the state has not spent any money on the private dwellings of the president in Nkandla. And when the president affirmed in Parliament that he built his own home and that he has a bond, he did not mislead Parliament. And the Public Protector in an investigation found that the bond on the private dwellings was indeed declared in Parliament. Now, and in the report, the Public Protector goes to the extent of saying she is giving the President the benefit of doubt that she didn't have the fringe aspects of the homestead when answered the Parliament. We'll come back to that. Both report confirms that there was no political interference in the implementation of the Prestige project. He refers to the eagerness on the part of the former Minister of Public Works and his deputy. But she came to the conclusion that there was no political interference. Both reports accept that the security of sitting and former presidents and deputy presidents is the responsibility of the state, and there is proper authority governing the provision of such security measures. The state did not pay for the improvements in the dwellings of the brothers of President Jacob Zuma, and the Public Protector is quite explicit about that. Therefore, the call by some for an impeachment of the President is a premeditated position. That has nothing to do with the report presented by the Public Protector. I would imagine that such parties took that decision even before the report came. As they read the leaks on the Mail and Guardian, they came to that position, they just maintained that position, irrespective of what the report says. Both the Interministerial report and the Public Protector report raise serious irregularities in the implementation of the project and come to the determination that those who failed in the conduct of their duties should face appropriate consequences. Be they government officials or ministers or former ministers, this is in regard to the omissions in the security clearance of those involved in the project, the price inflation, the maladministration, abuse of state resources, deviation from proper procurement procedures. So all of us accept that the biggest problem in that project was inflation of prices. We said that when the ministers released their report, we reaffirmed that position that prices there were inflated, and it's an issue that should be looked into. Actually, we go further than that as the ANC. We say this project must be used as a sample to look into all major projects, because it is generally a trend in the state to inflate prices in massive projects of government. The corrective measures suggested are similar. Many of them are in advanced stages of implementation, and we condemn we commend the speed with which government has moved to curb the identified abuses. It is our information that some criminal cases have already been referred and still will be referred to the law enforcement agencies. As I stated before, it is our view that the state must pursue all those who have accessed state funds fraudulently. Irrespective of who that person is, if that person accesses state funds fraudulently, that person should be pursued. And we confirm that having read the report of the Public Protector. Areas of disagreement as to what should be done with the cost of relocation of the crawl, the chicken run, the visitors center, the swimming pool, the so-called amphitheater. I'm calling it the so-called because in one report it is described differently, in another described differently. Must be addressed and be reconciled by government. If agreement cannot be reached within a short space of time, competent institutions of state must review the reports and make a determination. This highlights the dangers of two state institutions investigating the same matter. Because once you have two state institutions investigating the same matter, they make different determination. That is going to cause confusion in society. And this is an example of how undesirable it is to have two state institutions investigating the same matter. Now, we're referring this to a public, to a state institution that is competent to do that work. It may be a court of law because, in our view, once these two state institutions disagree, it doesn't have to fight it out in the public and try to compete for legitimacy. They must subject it to legal review and actually come to a determination that if this is the right approach, it should be followed and to the conclusion. Now, all public office bearers, officials, and private sector companies involved in animal administration must be brought to books. And all funds that were acquired inappropriately must be recovered. We said so when the interministerial task team released this report. We're repeating that position as the ANC today. The officials who have gone public with inaccurate information must be censured. We're taking an example of the commissioner of the police who gave information and description of a swimming pool as a fire pool. And when she gave details of what is the difference, one-dimensional structure, 2-meter deep all round, which is proving to be false, our view is that that is misrepresentation of facts, and therefore there is an expectation on our part that the Minister of Police must take appropriate action in this regard. The role of the architect and the principal agent needs further scrutiny. If his action led to undue enrichment and wrongful accessing state funds, such funds will have to be recovered. Other actions can be taken, but the most important thing, that money must be recovered by the state. We reaffirm our commitment to fighting crime and corruption, including strengthening of all state institutions involved in fighting crime and corruption. This includes the Chapter 9 institution, the Public Protector being one such institution. They must be strengthened and be supported. And the manifesto of the ANC commits our government to intensify the fight against corruption in both public and private sector through measures to restrict public servants from doing business and holding public officials individually liable for losses arising from corrupt action. We'll pursue action against companies involved in bid rigging, price fixing, and corruption in the past and current infrastructure build program. That means it is not only the current, it's the past, the current, and the future project. To this end, the ANC strongly recommends that centralized tender process as announced by the Minister of Finance in the budget speech to adjudicate major tenders in all spheres of government be put in place urgently. This centralized tender agency will have at some of its core functions checking on pricing, cost effectiveness, transparency, and adherence to procedures and fairness. And the omissions and weaknesses identified by the Public Protector must be attended with the necessary agency. Now, we're making this point because if a quantity surveyor in the Department of Public Works raised alarms about the rising costs and nobody took action, it means if there was a centralized body that had authority, maybe a paid to that a red alert that was issued. The African National Congress reaffirms its confidence in the work of institution established to support and strengthen the constitutional democracy. We will continue to work tirelessly to bring South Africa together to achieve a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous nation envisaged in the Constitution that so many have sacrificed and so much for. As we have committed when the report of the Interministerial Task Team was released, we will be inviting members of the media on a visit to this prestigious project in Nkandla in the next week so that we can talk to the real issues beyond the reports. And we think to us that will complete the picture. We had the interministerial report, we have got the Public Protector's report. We think that if we could go and do an inspection in loco, we'll complete the picture. Thank you very much.
That's our response to the Public Protector's final report on the security upgrades at Nkandla. We will now take your questions. Before we do so, I hope all of you have the statement. Can just raise your hands and tell us. We will note you, and before you speak, just say who you are, so that we have a sense of who you are. Let's start. Gentleman over there. 1, 2, the lady over there, the gentleman over there, the gentleman over here, the gentleman over there, and the gentleman over there. That will be our first round. As you speak, just say who you are, where you are from. It's normal procedure. Do we all have the speaking instruments? Yourself.
SG, hi. Hello. SG, Philip de Wet from the Mail and Guardian. I'm looking for the wording still at the moment. You say that those guilty of violations should be pursued. Does that include the president himself in terms of the finding of ethical violations? And if I can shoot a second one, you talk about the state institutions, perhaps even the courts, that should be considering this matter. Does that include Parliament? And will the ANC get behind a call to recall Parliament to consider this report?
Just a minute. If we can just indicate who we are and where we're from. Thank you very much.
SG Sabilo Ndlangisa from City Press. Is the ANC satisfied? Don't you think it is perhaps a grave indictment on the president that he's been found guilty of some kind of ethical breaches by the Public Protector? Because I see that your statement is silent in that regard, and also. The other question is, in Mangaung, you came up with all these noble, principles about, asking people to account for their behavior. Yet you seem to not be calling on the president of the ANC to account because, for example, the building you refer to as the so-called amphitheater, the visitor center, and other aspects, for example, the check-in run, those things were erected right inside the perimeter of his homestead. And, it strikes me as being odd that he would have visited his house several times and never have noticed that these things were being built, and they were being built by the state. Are you satisfied that this approach isn't simply, an approach of sort of creating like straw people and fall guys, who would eventually, take the responsibility for what went wrong with Nkandla. Thank you very much.
Number 3.
Hajra Marji, ANN 7. I have a question for the SG and the DSG. SG, I've read the report, I've reread the report, and I've reread the report. And it states that President Jacob Zuma was at the meeting when his chief architect, Mr. Nkandla, was introduced to the team handling the government upgrades, that Mr. Nkandla eventually became the de facto project manager, that he was the go-between between government as well as the president, and that whatever he said essentially went, and no minister, no officials questioned what projects he wanted or how much he wanted to spend on them. Given that, do you not think it's strange that the SIU investigation has been going for some time now, and yet we've had no word about whether his 16.5 million rand that he made out of this project has been frozen? We have had no word that he is being official word that he himself is being investigated or arrested. And in that light, SG, is there a growing disparity between what we say and what is actually being done? To the DSG, I remember listening to you in 2007 or 2008, and I've always kept in mind when you spoke about the president of the ANC in the build-up to an election campaign being demonized. I've been thinking a lot about that over the last 24 hours since I read the report. I'm not sure which is worse, DSG, not knowing that the state was building all these assets around you and paying for it, or knowing and not caring.
Next, gentleman over here.
Thank you. I'm Clement from Power FM. Mr. Mantashe, you're raising concerns about the timing of the release. But when we read the actual report of the Public Protector, she states there that government and the president himself were responsible for the delay of this release. Shouldn't you be shifting your blame to government and the president himself? Because the Public Protector says at one point that she was waiting for some documents that she had requested, and then she had to wait for more than, I think, about 9 months. So I just wanted to get your response on that. Shouldn't you be blaming the president himself and government? Thank you.
Number 5. Or is it?
Oh, yeah,
It's
it was
you.
me. I'm John Clark. I'm a freelance writer with the Southern Cross Catholic newspaper, but I need to own up I'm also at the moment consultant to the Opposition for Urban Tolling Alliance. You mentioned inflated prices. Yes, no, I'm a writer, freelance writer.
Oh.
But the inflated prices, as an example, and you embrace this report as an opportunity for us to see how inflated prices tends to run away with things and how to bring them in check. A major combining issue from my work with INATA is that people are refusing to pay their e-tolls because they see Nkandla as being such a waste. Is there not some way that the ANC would seek a way forward here to suspend e-tolling as a gesture towards trying to find a way forward, as your slogan for the election says, to a better future?
The last one. What was your name again? George. John from e-toll. Okay.
Hi, good morning. It's Kaya Kumalo from Kaya FM News. Mr. SG, concerning the disruptive effect in light of the release of the report, if you may just kindly expand on that. And concerning the establishment of the centralized tender board, they are concerned. South Africa is quite a very big country. Don't you think perhaps that would be a very bloated system? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. As you can see, we have been joined by the Treasurer General. Thank you very much. Who will start? Is it you? Yes, you.
Okay. All those found in violation, does that include the president? When we say all, we mean all. When you use the term all, it means you don't exclude anybody. But let me emphasize the fact that people who are found in violation by the report, not in the discussion, in the public discourse. All those people must be brought to book, they must be pursued. And that excludes nobody. The state institutions, does that include courts or parliament? It will include all competent state institutions. When we say all, we mean all competent state institutions. Be it courts, be it parliaments, they must do their work. But you're asking a question that to me says we must actually dictate to the Speaker of Parliament, who is heading an institution, what to do. And if we can be doing that regularly, I'm sure we'll have another question here. Why do you interfere with this institution? It's a very distinct institution. When we talk of separation of powers, we talk of the government, parliament, and the judiciary. And that parliament is an institution that is standing on its own. And it is headed by a person called the Speaker, working with all other presiding officers. That is their decision. From where we are seated as the political party, we say competent institutions of state must actually do what they should do in terms of getting finalization of where there are disagreements. That's what we're saying. Not calling the president to account, Langisa. I don't know who told you that the president has not been called to account or will not be called to account? Or is it an assumption? No, wait. You are making a particular assumption that the president has not been called to account and will not be called to account. But the report is quite clear on the line ministries that have not done this, the omissions and the commissions in the report. And our view is that let's use the report as a guide and not do witch hunting. If you have a passion about pursuing the president to be called to account, hold that as your passion. Let's go to the report and pursue people who are highlighted and acknowledged in the report as having committed this omission or have not done this, and that is the route we should follow. Because if we go out of the report and follow our emotional feeling and passions about issues, we are going to falter. That's my view. So if there are issues that the president will have to answer, the ANC will be able to call the president to answer questions on any matter. For example, you are making a point that says he didn't see the crawl, he didn't see the chicken run, and I think it's an exaggeration that is intended to distort the information. Because if there is development around us, let me give you an example. Government approved the building of power stations. We're all aware, we see them. We see them. They are around us. But there are line functions that deal with the building of those power stations that account when the time frame for Mudupi is broken. That line authority accounts. If there is a building of stadia, it is not the president who said, didn't you see the stadia here? Why didn't you account for this stadia? There is line functions. That's how government works. It's a machinery. It is not a one-person driven institution. That's why there are ministries, and under those ministries there is a big machinery that drives those issues. And we must never exonerate those institutions and that network if the misconduct is in those positions. We must identify exactly where the misconduct, where the deviation is, and deal with it as such, not just follow our passion and our emotion. The president was present when the architect was introduced, and I think the report, who read the report to that effect? Hadra. The president was there. The report itself doesn't stop where you have stopped. It goes on to say it was logical, that's what the report says, for an architect of the building of the dwellings to be introduced to the other team that was building so that the work should be integrated. That's what the report says. So it doesn't stop where you stopped. Now I'm not sure why should that be assumed as this man now being an untouchable. And to me, somebody gave away authority he or she is having at the altar of a person. To us, when we read that report, we don't think Makanya is given a bowl, what is it, a bowl of roses, what is it? A bunch of roses. It doesn't smell roses at all there. But what is important to us is who actually abdicated responsibility in the face of this architect. And we're going further to say in our statement, if that architect in that process abused the powers and accessed state resources wrongfully, that money must be recovered. So when we say everybody who got it, we actually talk to that. If there was an initial contract of 400,000 rand, it ends up being 16-point-something million rand. Obviously, that should be interrogated and it should be pursued. And the question is, why is he not arrested after the SIU has been commissioned? I don't remember the date of the commissioning of that report, but it doesn't go beyond December. So that means the question is, SIU should have completed its work in the last 2 months and some days. And there should be arrest by now. And my understanding from the ministers in the cluster is that the SIU is working very hard there. There are cases that have been referred to law enforcement agencies. Now, you can't sit in Luthuli House and say, police X and police Y, go and arrest so-and-so. And all you can monitor is whether there is progress in the report, and that's all you will want to get. And therefore, those agencies, if you don't see enough progress in that, you will call the responsible person and say, but there is not sufficient progress in this regard. Now, and the arrest should not be linked to the release of the report of the Public Protector. That should not be one of the factors determining when a person is arrested and where whoever is arrested. It can be determined by when the report of the Public Protector is arrested. I will leave the demonization of the president. I'm leaving that one. Delay of the report should blame government. No. We can't blame government. You blame the person who is responsible for the investigation. If I'm called to an investigation and that institution that conducts an investigation has the power to subpoena me, you can't look for people who are actually called to account to that investigation. It is the institution that investigates that has a responsibility to release the report timelessly. And my own view is that if any of the people who are called to submit reports and respond are playing delaying tactics, I would imagine that institution, that Chapter 9 institution, has the powers to deal with such delaying tactics. Otherwise, it will never finish a report. It will never finish a report. Because it means if I don't want to go, I can just sit at home and not submit the report. My own view is that the responsibility of writing the report and investigation lies with the institution, not people who are called to account. Because at that point in time, it is not the Public Protector versus the government. The government there is a subject of investigation. It is therefore called to court. If it was in a court of law, they would be respondents. Once they are respondents, they are not having a status of a government. They have a status of a respondent. Now, if you elevate them when they are respondent and you call them government, it means the institution will never work. It means any court of law will be held back because government doesn't want to come and answer for its case. That's why we say the release to us remains a concern. And somebody asked us, how is it disruptive? How is it disruptive? The fact that we're here today addressing it instead of being somewhere else doing door-to-door is a clear example of how disruptive it is. Today, we're here. We're talking to you about a report. We're not doing door-to-door and campaigning. That is the disrupting effect. The fact that all the parties yesterday were talking about impeachment, court cases, and others will do certain things, and I'm told others want to travel to Nkandla police station and lay charges, all those things. That is the disruptive effect of the report. That's the point I'm making in the run-up to elections. It distracts us from doing what we should be doing. The inflated prices, people refuse to pay tolls because of Nkandla. Gosh. No, it's not a fact. It's not a fact. Roads in Gauteng, because I always refuse to discuss e-tolls as e-tolls. I always insist on discussing e-tolls as the infrastructure network of Gauteng. It's e-tolls, it's BRT, it's Gautrain, it's that integrated transport system that we're talking about and the infrastructure thereof. And therefore, e-toll is a very small part of that infrastructure because there is no e-toll in Kala, where I was born, because roads there have no shoulder. There is e-toll in Gauteng because when I come here, I drive in a 4-lane road. And I see the difference, I can feel it because I drive to both. And I don't expect to have e-toll in Kala because roads are narrow, they have no shoulder, there's no yellow line, let alone two lanes or 4 lanes. And therefore, it is not about e-toll, it's about the quality of infrastructure in the smart city region called Gauteng, which is an integrated province with high infrastructure, exemplary infrastructure in the country, and integrated transport system. That's what I'm saying. And therefore that debate, if that debate will be debated because no, Mandashe built a house in Kala, therefore we can't pay for roads in Gauteng, it will be a ridiculous argument. Let's deal with the issue there, because if you are sensationalizing the issue, you can say many things. That how many houses would you build with this, how many that is an emotional argument, which is necessary sometimes, but it doesn't deal with the issue. Let's confront the issue. The inflation of prices, to me, is an issue that we should confront in the Nkandla Prestige project and other major projects. And I would imagine that when you talk about that, bear in mind the case of the construction companies colluding on building the stadium for World Cup. And therefore, it's a trend, it's a norm, and that is the norm that should be arrested generally in the country, that people must not inflate prices when they do business with government. And government must take steps to do so. And Nkandla is but one example. A hospital in Kimberley, same thing. You can take we've got few projects that we're looking at very interestingly, which point to the direction that there is a trend that doing business with government means inflation of prices.
Thank you. I was trying to persuade Jackson that I answer from there because it's my height. I think we need to just look at the flow of events on this matter. Firstly, the president relieves Jeff Deutsch of his duties. The president appoints Tulas Nexi, and Tulas Nexi is instructed to investigate the costs of the build at Nkandla. He does so at the instruction of the person that he is responsible to, which is the President of South Africa. Nexi gives a report, and it's quite clear that the coordination between the various instruments of the security cluster have not provided enough information to provide a comprehensive picture of what all the costs are given that there were a number of different players, the police, intelligence, the defense force, and so on. The President proclaims by proclamation that an interministerial task team investigates the costs of the security upgrades at Nkandla. Now, to me, that suggests that following the public outcry, following the media, the many suggestions about him having spent, I think at some point there was a headline that said Zuma spends 250 million on his own house. That begins to say, look, there's an issue here. But it also takes into account that when a tender or when a decision is made to do a build, the principal involved doesn't necessarily know what the actual costs of that build are going to be. But I think we need to accept that the president of the ANC did not sit back and allow matters to proceed uninvolved, unconcerned, unable to say, but I want to know. Of course, the report was classified by Minister Nexi, and the ANC then insists. Now, let me tell you how the ANC also works. We do not insist, myself and the SG, on our own. In October, we discuss the fact that there's a classified report that raises a whole range of issues, and we want that report declassified and made public. And indeed, that is done. And I think that it must be accepted and understood that it's not an uncaring person that says, I want to know what this thing costs, because ultimately it's been projected as him having spent this money as an individual. And clearly along the way, he's not being told every single day this is going to happen. For instance, on this issue of what do you call this thing, amphitheater. It's described in so many different ways. And at one point, it is described what looks like fairly logical as a holding a wall. What do you call this? Retention wall. But still, it is still described now as an amphitheater. For that reason, the SG and I are insisting that we need to go to Nkandla, and we want to see this thing for ourselves. We've not been there, either of us. So I just want to say, Hajra, that in 2007 and 2008, there were different circumstances. But when we spoke, when you and I spoke, I took you through pre-election of Nelson Mandela, described as a terrorist, pre-election of Thabo Mbeki, described very derogatory by the South African media, pre-election of President Jacob Zuma, very different circumstances. And I think now we are saying, look, let's not say the president didn't care. Let's actually examine what actions he did take. And a president who did not care would not have asked, would not have changed the minister, and would not have instructed his minister to investigate. Two ministers. Oh, yes, he actually also there was another minister, Mahlangu as well. And instructed Nexi to investigate and proclaims a interministerial task team, which, by the way, I must just say, is a very legal entity in the sense that ministers of state take an oath of office. They are accountable to Parliament, but they're also accountable to their cabinet. They're the cabinet of the Republic of South Africa. So there can be no suggestion that any outcome of an investigation that they do has no legal status. And I think we can argue about that at some other point. But thank you very much.
They are not a legal committee of ministers. That has no legal standing.
No. What the SG just said, I think let's just say what he said. The ministers who sit in the security cluster, we want to put it on record that it is incorrect and disrespectful to call them little ministers who sits, little committee of ministers that has no standing. It is not only disrespectful, but we think that it's something that all of us should not call them. The gentleman over there, the lady, yourself, and yourself, in that order. You have a mic. You just tell us who you are. Just speak.
Portion of unsecurity of the enhancements that were done to time. I just wanted to find out from the ANC whether you would encourage him to pay that, whether you will talk to him about it, and what you would consider a reasonable portion that needs to be paid to the state. And then, sorry, I've got a second question to the DSG. The Public Protector mentions you specifically, no, not you. She mentions something that you alluded to when you said that she was comfortable. She seemed comfortable with the geek, and she said that those statements from the ANC were hurtful. I want to know if you still stick by that assertion.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hello, SG. I'm Ranjini Mansami from the Daily Maverick. SG, in 2008, there was a judgment by Judge Chris Nicholson in the Pietermaritzburg High Court, which you used as a basis to recall President Thabo Mbeki. And the reason was that the ANC gave was because there was an abuse of state institutions for a political agenda. Now you have a report by a Chapter 9 institution which finds that the president is in violation of the Executive Ethics Code and his conduct is inconsistent with the Constitution. Are you calling an NEC to at least discuss this matter? And I also want to find out how you feel about your senior deployees in the state who are members of the NEC and NWC who are found by the Public Protector to not be doing their jobs properly, of improper conduct and maladministration. These include the Minister of Police and the Minister of Public Works. Thank you.
Next. Why did it jump you, but when it has jumped, fine. Koli.
Okay. Koli Mgambi from ENCA. My question is slightly similar to Ranjani's. The Nkandla issue has been such a sore point for South Africans. I think we've even seen the president being booed as a result of this. And coupled with many other issues that have come. You mentioned them, Gupta Gate, it's been there. Is it not time that the ANC suggests, or is it not time that the ANC recalls the president, or at the very least, apologize to the public for what has happened here? Second question, the president, and this is now to the DSG, who says that the president has not remained uninvolved in this project. And I would like to differ with you, ma'am, and say that ENCA has the president on record saying that he could not get involved because these were security matters. How do you explain that? Thank you.
After you, the gentleman over there.
Hi, I'm Renat Alkhan from CCTV. My first question is very much what Koli Mgambi says. Do you think the president owes the nation an apology? And you talk of the disruptive effect of the Public Protector's final report, SG. How concerned are you that the issue of Nkandla will cost the ruling party dearly at the ballot box?
Hi, David Smith of The Guardian newspaper in the UK. What impact do you think this will have on the election results? Are you worried the ANC will dip below 60%? And if I can ask a second question to the Secretary General, if you were the President and you read this report, hypothetically, if you're in Jacob Zuma's shoes, would you resign?
There were Karima.
Hi, Karima Brown, Independent Newspapers. Variations of my questions have been asked, but just quickly. The SG mentioned that this report impacts on election preparations. I wanted to ask all the members of the ANC on the podium, what has voters been telling you when you've been out campaigning, how they see Nkandla, and how has it been dealt with when you deal with voters who raise the issue? When reporters speak to voters, they speak about ANC people eating. Is that the questions that you get asked in relation to Nkandla, and how do you respond to the voters on this matter? Your own research, which you conduct as your campaign goes on, what impact has the Nkandla matter had on your ability to communicate with your base, not just your supporters, but your actual members, your cadres in your branches? In light of the findings of the Public Protector, several of the ministers named, in fact from the President down, is on your election list. Are you going to amend it in light of the findings of the Public Protector, given that those violations are very serious, and you've asked institutions to actually investigate? Is it perhaps not imprudent to field some of those people on the list? And then just lastly, is the ANC going to have a special sitting of its NEC to look at a way forward in relation to the deployees that have been implicated in whatever way described by the Public Protector? Thanks.
The lady, thank you.
Hi, Jackson. This is Varashni from the Mail and Guardian. I just have a question about the two institutions, as you refer to, as the Secretary General referred to them, the task team and the Public Protector. I take your point that the task team is a legal standing, but can they have the same authority? Should their reports be held given equal weight, given that the task team, as you said, are accountable to Cabinet, and therefore are they not playing player and referee? Can they adjudicate on this issue involving Cabinet? Should the Public Protector's report not be given more weight, and should it be subjected to a judicial review? The differences between the reports. And my second question is just about the pool. I had a lot of ANC people saying to me before this report was released that it really was a pit. Like you said, there was a misrepresentation. You were led to believe that it was, 1 meter deep and so on. Who led you guys to believe that? And how did that such a bad misunderstanding come about when the photos show such a difference?
Asigcine ngawe baba, we'll come back if there is still necessity. We'll come.
My name is Sintebo. I'm with the SABC. Mine is simple. What do you make of the GA and the EFF court challenge emanating from this report?
Thank you very much, SG.
All the difficult ones are for you. The Public Protector said the President must pay a reasonable percentage of the cost for non-security aspects. And the question is whether we'll encourage him to do so, or will we determine the portion, the reasonable portion. I'm sure you were not in the lockdown. You didn't read that. The report is explicit that the President must sit with particular ministers, Minister of Finance and Minister of Police, to determine that reasonable percentage. That's what the report says. It is not the ANC that will determine what the reasonable percentage is. Actually, it has no competence to determine that percentage. The ANC doesn't have that competence. Therefore, it will be government that determines that percentage. So that's what the report says. The report itself is clear on who should determine that reasonable percentage. But what we should also appreciate, that's why we say two state institutions investigating the same issue and come to different determination causes confusion, because the public protector come to determine that these are non-security aspects. The interministerial task team report says movement of the crawl was a security consideration, and they go on and on and on. Therefore, you have two aspects of the same find. That's why we say the two reports are the same in the body. They become different when they make determinations. Now, and I think that question can be linked to the question from the lady from Mail and Guardian is, I could see when you were lashing Jackson that you want your name to be pronounced properly. Yeah, Arashne. Okay. Whether the reports can be given the same weight. From where I'm seated, if a report comes from the Public Protector and another one comes from the Auditor General, which one do you put more weight? If there is a report from a Chapter 9 institution and there is a report from government, which one do you put weight on? Let me tell you how that question is wrong, because it means the government must stop doing its work until a public protector has made a determination. That's what you're saying, basically. But government can't wait for a Chapter 9 institution to do its work. It should continue doing its work. Chapter 9 institution must intervene appropriately as it is required in terms of law. So there's no waiting in this. There are two reports from two state institutions, one from the Cabinet Task Team and one from the Public Protector. They make the same observations, but make different determinations. That is what I said need to be put to a competent body to actually assess and review and reconcile. And to me, that is the category of issues that should go to that body. Now, Ranjani says Nicholson report led to the recall on Mbeki. You will not find that in any document of the ANC. It's in your head. It's in your head. If you go to documents of the ANC, they will tell you that constituted a tipping point in a tense relationship of two centers of power. So I'm not sure if you want to say it is the Nicholson judgment that led to the recall. No, it is not. Come again? No. I call it the tipping point, because when that happens, it reflects on the tense relations. And when that major incident happens, it just becomes a tipping point. So to call it an issue that led to the recall and say, therefore, because there is a public protector's report, you must recall. And I think one of the dangers we'll commit in the country is to equate the public protector to a court of law. If we do that, we're going to regret that in many years to come, because it's not a court of law. It's a Chapter 9 institution. That's why it makes findings, it makes recommendations, and it submits its report to other bodies, including Parliament. A court of law makes judgments. It's not the same. It's not the same. Actually, a public protector report is reviewable. It's reviewable. Yes. A judgment is reviewable in the judicial system. Okay. It can be appealed. You can appeal a court judgment. There is review. The court, the determination of the public protector is reviewable. Court judgment is appealable. Ranjin, big difference. Now, this question was asked twice. Are we calling a special? No, we're not calling a special NEC. We have an NEC, a scheduled NEC next week. to deal with normal work of the ANC. Obviously, we may talk about the issue in the course of running the NEC meeting. There is no special NEC to deal with the report of the Public Protector, no. Next week, there is a normal National Executive Committee meeting for 3 days, and that Executive Committee will deal with the business of the ANC. And I'm sure those who have been coming to media briefing will recall that we said the May one will be focusing on the state of the organization. We may, in the course of discussing the state of the organization, deal with the Public Protector's report. But there is no special NEC for it. You have seen the president being booed. You have seen me being booed. That's equally. I remember you present in the meeting in Patchwood when I was booed for 10 minutes by the SAT members. You were there. Now, talk to the Nkandla report, deal with booing as an issue that happens in the course of political work. We've seen Zille booed in Sultana Bay. There was no Nkandla. Politicians get booed. You may not know that. You may not know that. Politicians get booed. Politicians get booed. Yes. Actually, we take it as normal, actually, to be booed. It's normal. And that's why sometimes we react to it in a particular way, different to everybody. There's a booing and so forth, and everybody become hysteric. We never become hysteric about booing because it happens every day. You know, apologizing. Why is the ANC not apologizing? The ANC is not supposed to apologize, actually, because it is not cited in the report. And the ANC doesn't have a private residence called Nkandla. Its private residence is called Chief Albert Luthuli House. If there is any apology, if need be, that can be by the president, if need be. It may be by the relevant ministers who have omitted doing certain things when it comes to a point. So that is an issue that goes at the level of the commission or omission committed by the person. It is that person who should apologize. And therefore, if there is a need for apology, it can't be the ANC. Even if we apologize, I can tell you now, we can say we apologize profusely. South Africans will not believe us. They will call that apology a cover-up because we'll be apologizing on behalf, and it will not make sense. And therefore, we leave that to the president, if need be, the relevant minister, Minister of Police, Minister of Defense, Minister of Public Works, and all those ministers. Those are the people who can actually oppose to South Africans for omissions and commissions. How concerned is the ANC about this? The ANC is concerned about the elections. It takes elections very serious. Anything that is having a potential of negative publicity concerns the ANC. But I think it will be an exaggeration to say this will take the ANC below 60%. You put a figure to it. What if it takes us below 70%? Okay. We'll be concerned if it takes us below 70%. Still. So the point I'm making is that let's not play around figures on this matter. Let's accept that it is a concern because anything that is actually bringing negative publicity close to the ANC will be a source of concern for the ANC. And the ANC must deal with it. That's why we're here today to talk to you. Because if we're not concerned, we'd have gone with our normal business. We'll be doing door-to-door work somewhere today. We're here today because we want to communicate our concern and our views on the matter. What are the voters telling us? They're telling us many things. Mostly, they tell us that they want houses, they want electricity, they want water, they want proper streets, they want sanitation. That's what voters tell us. The question of Nkandla gets debated in meetings closed like this. But when you go and campaign there, our people know that what is important to them is to change their own lives. When you campaign, they say, when will build the house built? When will I be taken out of this shack? And that's the issue. What are the jobs? Why are you allowing the jobs to be taken away by foreigners at the bottom end of the economy? Those are the issues that come up very regularly. You meet these ones. You remember, last week I was in Sasolburg, and I did a whole section of a township. There was one woman who raised the issue. And the Independent wrote an article on that. And I asked the journalist concerned, why do you multiply one person? One person. And we allowed journalists to go with us, house to house, meet people in the street, talk to them, campaign. This one woman came by that and raised the issue. And in the article, it was a major issue on the article, but it's one person multiplied. We don't say it is not important. It's a major issue. For us as the leadership of the ANC, it's a major issue, whether voters raise it or not. That's why we're concerned about it. That's why we're dealing with it. That's why we're confronting it. And that would be my response. That's how we respond. Because it's not a major issue that comes all the time. Will the list be amended? There's no reason for that. Otherwise, can I tell you, your way of questioning shows to me that you never ran a party or a club. That shows clearly that you have never run a club, just a football club, let alone a big organization. Can you imagine a situation that there's an issue here, and there's a report, an investigation and a report, and every time there's a report, you run and dismantle your structures? Can't be. Can't be. Must allow this process of this investigation and the implementation of the steps taken to take its course, finish, then we take informed decisions. Otherwise, if you take decision on the basis of there's this report, it's still to be investigated, and the Public Protector says, reprimand Minister X, Y, and Z, and then we come here and say, fire them from the list, you see? The Public Protector doesn't say to the President, President, please reprimand Minister X, Y, and Z. We come here, you say, fire them, remove them from the list. It's an issue that we must deal with as a society, whether as a society we are in the first century after Christ, where you judge a person to the fourth generation of those who disagree with you. I don't think we should do that. We should deal with issues when we censor people. We must censor individuals on the basis of the merits of a process. And if we don't think there should be processes, we must just get a report and we pronounce in a media briefing that we're firing 5 ministers. Actually, I can tell you that in 10 years' time, there will be no organization. Because if there are ministers who are found guilty of any misdemeanor, the duty of the organization is to invoke processes to deal with that issue on individual basis. That is called fairness. That is what is called fairness and justice. It's to give people to answer for their misdemeanors and to take decisions. Now, the shortcut that you are giving us, that you read the report yesterday are you firing that minister and that minister and that minister, is a shortcut that smacks of unfairness and miscarriage of justice. Now, EFF and DA court cases, it's their cases, why don't you ask them? Their cases, they're laying cases, you know. To them, they are sensationalizing the issue. They go to go. Actually, they're not laying the charges because they want a court case. They're laying the charges so that they get the media reporting that they've laid a court case, and that's it. It's sensational, it's political, it's politicking. It's in the run-up to elections. Let them do it. It's the same as DA marching on us here. Say we're marching to Thuli House. They know it is wrong. They do it because it's sensational. It will attract headlines. That's it. Jesse?
Thank you. Let me start with Collie first and retry to answer the question a little bit differently, but come to the same answer. The President could not have been involved in the security assessment of his own security needs. That is not allowed. That is done by the security cluster. That's number one. Secondly, he could not have been involved in the process of procuring any of the requirements. Indeed, that is correct. He did not get involved in that. But the question from Hajra was, he seemed not to care. So I'm pointing out that I disagree with Hajra because he fires two ministers responsible for that area of work. He instructs a new minister to investigate what's going on with the costs. That minister investigates, finds out that the coordination between the various members of that cluster did not provide enough information. He then proclaims by presidential proclamation a task team to be set up to investigate and report. Now, I think there's it's just two different sets of issues, if I might put it to you that way. And of course, he then signs the proclamation at the end of the report of the task team for the SIU to investigate. He has to do that as the head of state. No one else does that. So I just thought I should try it that way, maybe. And as one prosecutor said, what if I put it to you in this way? In terms of the Sunday Times issue, let me just say this. It's not an attack on the public protector as an individual to point out failures or weaknesses in the manner that that office is run. When the issue arose, and we had a press conference, 3 leaks had happened. And one of the things that concerns the ANC very deeply is when a provisional report is leaked, there's an element of injustice and unfairness that is visited upon people who are being investigated and whose names are in that report. Because a provisional report is handed to a person to respond to allegations that are made. Now, that report is leaked. Some of those allegations are unfounded. But in the minds of the public, because the media will hold the pattern of the leaked report forever and a day. And we believe that, I also read the Public Protector's report, and by her own admission, she says that the final report is radically different from the unsubstantiated allegations contained in the leaked provisional report. She says that herself. So I think that, I believe that we live in a democracy where robust statements can be made about each other without them being seen as personal or personalized, having been personalized. And I think that really, just as we might differ with a court judgment, which it is your right as a citizen to do, or even as an organization to do, one has a right and sometimes even an obligation to differ with a view held in a Chapter 9 institution.
We will be taking this as last round as we have some urgent matter to attend to. I'll take the ones who have not spoken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. That order. I know the one.
Timing of its delivery. Beg your pardon? Okay, beg your pardon. Sorry, I added Surly. But you're saying that they're responsible for the timing of its release. Thuli Madonsela said that she waited for 9 months for the president to provide the information she needed to complete her report. She went on furthermore in the press conference saying yesterday she would have released this report midway through last year were it not for these extensive delays. Can she be held responsible in its entirety for the timing of this release? You demanded that it should be released before elections. She's of the opinion that she delivered it as soon as she could. Did you expect her to subpoena the president, as you are suggesting? And then, secondly, you suggest that you want legal examination of the Public Protector's report next to the interministerial report to decide which will supersede the other. How is this going to happen? What's your plan in this regard?
Next. If colleagues, we are taking this round because we respect all of you as we always do, but we have time constraints on our side. If you can just be to the point. Thank you. Next. Is that thing on, Baba?
Great. Lee Mulifi from the VIP project. You point...
Which project?
The Voting is Power project.
What? Can you repeat yourself again?
VIP, Voting is Power. Voting is Power project. It's a campaign.
Are you a journalist?
Yes, sir, I am a journalist. We produce content directed at young people.
Oh.
Yes, there are many of those, believe me. You say here that you highlight the dangers of having two state institutions investigating the same matter. Which of the two do you believe is redundant? And could we see the legitimacy of the office challenged, perhaps like the Scorpions were, and at a parliamentary level at any point?
Thank you. Next.
This is Johannes Marburg from AFP News Agency. I'd just like to know, Secretary General, you referred to wondering why nobody's been arrested yet in this regard. So I was wondering, are you calling directly for the architect involved to be arrested, any other people involved to be arrested?
Thank you very much. Straight to the point. Yes?
Franz Wild from Bloomberg. Did you answer the question regarding whether the ANC will advise the president to repay some of the funds? Okay, I didn't. Okay.
Do you have the statement?
It's not in the statement. My question is, you talk a lot about the processes and all of that, and you're not responsible for these particular individuals, but these individuals, at least many of them, are ANC members. Is the ANC considering any type of internal disciplinary action, or is that going to be something that's at least going to be discussed? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Who starts? TJ.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Just one issue that we wanted just to finish off was the issue of the misleading description. Okay. Now, we were quite concerned as the ANC leadership. We have been having a number of briefings where we ask questions. If we find something doesn't make sense, we ask the questions. And in this case, the description that was given to us is what we've repeated publicly. And our office is such that whenever there is an issue, we have to understand from the responsible institution. And the description that was given to us was completely erroneous. And therefore, when we go public and make a statement, we take on the good faith with which the statement is made. And we have indicated here that we are very upset with that. And we actually don't think that any official can mislead anyone, not the public, not the ANC leadership, not the government leadership. And that's the point that we're making. And so it was based on the fact that we ask questions and we take the answers seriously. And that's the point we're making. The other issue, probably want to with all the issues, the issue of losing caliber of leadership. No, I don't think we can say the ANC is losing the caliber of leadership. To start off with, Madiba was in his own league. You're not going to ever have another Madiba. And therefore, it is not correct to be comparing anyone with Madiba because the circumstances that brought about Madiba and everything around Madiba was very different. And I think we need to accept that we're very fortunate to have Madiba. The point, though, is that sometimes we take certain issues very much for granted. There are huge challenges in managing an emerging democracy, and therefore it puts a lot of strain in the entire organization, in the institutions of government, in the fact that there are lots of things where we're all pioneering on that will become very easy and logical many years to come, but that would have been a lot of struggle as we try to make the right choices over that period. And I think we mustn't underestimate the fact that we're actually trying to fix our democracy as we go along. And therefore, what you will find is that certain challenges we'll have to face, and some of those challenges will take lessons as things happen, but some we can look back in retrospect and say, well, this was not the right choice, this could have been a good choice. And I think we must understand that it's a very fluid and dynamic situation that we're managing. And part of the mistakes, some of the achievements, all of that are a balance of what in the future we'll look back and say that's our history, difficult as it might have been. The question of the legitimacy of the public protector, I think if you look back at the statement that has been given, there isn't anywhere where anybody has said we do not support. As a matter of interest, the Chapter 9 institutions were part of the Constitution. That Constitution came about largely because of the African National Congress, because that's the party that had the biggest amount of votes to support such a constitution. No other party could have done it unless the ANC was actually doing that. So I don't think that when there are issues of disagreement on processes, on content, on conclusions, we must equate that to be a suggestion that there is an undermining the legitimacy of an institution. And in this case, you would have also noticed that the Secretary General has highlighted a number of areas where not only the Interministerial Committee, but also the ANC would have certain observations that are almost similar. And the point that we are making is that part of this challenge of a new democracy that's emerging is also about the role, of the different institutions of government investigating the same issue and therefore creating a bit of a difficulty when you get to the conclusions. And that's really the point that we're making. It is not really up to us to say who needs to make a decision on that matter. We're simply saying there will be competent institutions of state that must deal with that matter, and we are deferring it at that level. And I think if the ANC were to start pinpointing to say go to that institution and that institution, when in fact there should be the function of those who are managing the issue, and I think it would not be a correct thing. Our issue in this case is not that we have a problem with the legitimacy of the public protector. We also are saying that we accept a number of things. There are issues which we believe in the context of the discussion need to be teased out more, and that's the point that we are making about it. The Secretary General is saying it is not just government that we say must be investigated, government officials, and that action must be taken on those. We're saying even if there are others, people outside, as an example, the the architect is actually being made an example. But it is not also up to us to say we can call for this one to be arrested. Well, we're not in charge of the process. We're not in charge of the charges, the investigations, the outcomes thereof. But we believe that those who are involved in that will be able to determine at which point who needs to be arrested and what action needs to be taken. And all we're saying, we stand behind those as the ANC to make sure that those are acted upon, and we will support the processes that take the issue forward. And it will not be correct for us to start identifying individuals and say so-and-so must be arrested, so-and-so must be arrested. And I think we need to understand it in that kind of in that kind of context. Now, you get a public reporter, public protector's report out. It's only a day old, and we have not heard how far the government would have discussed it, and we have also got our own discussions and so on. So there aren't really any assumptions we can make if there's anybody who would need to be disciplined internally and so on. Those issues you don't make public pronouncements on, you report on the basis of an internal process that would determine. In other words, if any of the issues are referred for internal discipline, that's only the way that things happen. But it wouldn't be a conclusion you can read on the basis of a report that has just been issued without any discussions or processing internally. So I would then say that it might be a bit too early for anybody to expect us to answer a question like that, because we don't know. Let's say there's an investigation and it takes a particular course, and then the ANC comes to the end of that course and say, oh, but with that, we need to take action, and then, of course, the action can be taken. I think we must also underline the point that the ANC has been as much concerned about this matter as the public has been raising the matter and debating the matter. And it's concerned, as the SG is saying, we all have this view, we're concerned about it, irrespective of how much is being raised in the public. It's because our role is to make sure that we give a particular oversight over some of the things that are happening in the government. But at the same time, the ANC has to be always alert on issues that might be attracting negative sentiments towards it, whatever the source thereof would be. And therefore, the ANC remains very concerned on the matter. But we also believe that we need to allow the competent institutions to take the matters forward and take them to conclusion.
I think it is important for all of us as we conclude, Jackson. Is it the sole responsibility of the public protector to ensure that a report is compiled? You received the report yesterday. Before that, you didn't know what was happening. Yes, like me, I didn't know what was happening. Therefore, I can't call for everybody else to ensure that the report is completed. I can only call on the institution that is responsible for that report. So that's the only logic we're using, that if the investigating institution is X, Y, and Z, you can't look for everybody else when you don't have insight of what is happening there. And you don't want to have insight because the public protector must conduct its investigation independent, out of influence of everybody. It's a blame is a wrong word. All we are saying is that timing of the release of a report that has impact on political processes is very important when you are in the run-up to elections for political parties. It may not be of concern for everybody else. For political parties, it is of concern, and that's why we've been calling for the release of the report from December. The last point I want to talk, I think comrades really covered all the reports. I think we must be careful of this thing of every time you talk to us, you equate us to Mandela. Because you are doing what Mandela hated. You are doing what Mandela hated. Mandela hated being thrown around and brandished as an angel. He always said that. You know, he made a point in 1993, I was talking to Richard Stengel. Your duty is to work with human beings as human beings, not because you think they are angels. That's his words himself. Now, if every time you see problems, you see, what about Mandela? The ANC didn't start with Mandela and ended with Mandela. Before Mandela, there were how many presidents? There were 8, 9. There were 9 presidents before Mandela. So the ANC history doesn't start with Mandela and end with Mandela. There were 9 presidents before him. There are 2 after him. Okay? There will be many presidents to come. So it's a terrible thing to say. Do you think there's a caliber that is not like Mandela? Why not like Zuma? Why don't one look for a caliber like Pixlika Isaka Seme? And why don't you look for caliber like Chief Albert Luthuli or Oliver Tambo? You can list them. So everybody who every time talk to the ANC have a picture of an ANC of Mandela that is narrowly one period. I know that journalist is periodizing analysis. He has no broad mind of analysis. It's just periodizing analysis. So there's no such a thing. Talk to problems, don't talk to Mandela. You see. There's no going to fantasize ngayo Mandela. Mandela. Please, that's the only appeal. Thank you very much. Thank you for talking to us. We are going somewhere with Comrade Jesse Duarte. We have a mission. Yeah, otherwise we'll miss our flight. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the closing statement by the SG. Can you remain, because we have the Youth League coming in. The Youth League is right here. Youth League, and the one-on-ones, Comrade Kusela will deal with that. Thank you very much.